Starting a new job always brings a certain level of nervousness. You walk into a foreign environment, hoping to blend in, to learn quickly, and to make the best possible impression. My first day at the shoe store felt like any other. Mundane tasks, a friendly manager, and coworkers that seemed normal enough at first glance. It was the kind of job that didn't scream excitement, but I was perfectly fine with that. Or at least I thought I was. The shoe store was small, the kind of place where the routine was predictable. Rows of neatly lined shelves displayed shoes, organized by type and size. The scent of new leather and rubber filled the air, mingling with the faint whiff of cleaning products from the freshly mopped floors. The walls were a neutral color, meant to keep attention on the products rather than the decor. Everything seemed to run smoothly, and I figured this would be a straightforward job. No surprises. Lisa, the manager, greeted me with the professionalism I expected. She had an efficient air about her, clearly used to running the store like a well-oiled machine. The initial hours passed uneventfully as she walked me through the store's layout, the register system, and the storage area. We moved through each section with a sense of routine. It wasn't long before she began introducing me to the other employees, both of whom seemed friendly enough. Everything felt orderly, comfortable. That is, until Joanne arrived. Joanne was the last person I met that day, coming in for her evening shift. She was older, significantly shorter than anyone else in the store, with a round, wrinkled face framed by thinning gray hair. She had the kind of unassuming appearance that immediately made you think she'd be the sweet grandmotherly type, soft-spoken, gentle, and probably great at baking cookies. But appearances can be deceiving, as I quickly learned. Joanne made her presence known the moment she stepped into the store. Despite her small stature, she carried an energy that filled the room. She marched toward us with purpose, her expression set in frustration. I didn't know what to make of it. Without any warning or pleasantries, she launched into a story, one that caught me completely off guard. The gist of what Joanne shared became clear quickly. Her husband had discovered something about her personal life, and it was causing some tension at home. The way she explained it was direct, and frankly, a little too revealing for a work environment. Her words carried a sense of indignation and outrage, as though this was the most natural thing to talk about in front of new colleagues. It took me a moment to fully comprehend what she meant. The word toys immediately threw me. At first, I imagined something harmless, collectibles, perhaps. Maybe Joanne had a quirky hobby. I pictured shelves lined with colorful plastic figures, a modest collection that she might have displayed with pride. I imagined her husband, annoyed by the clutter, trying to throw them out in some misguided attempt to declutter their home. But no, this was not about innocent childhood relics. Joanne wasn't talking about Barbie dolls or action figures. The realization hit me like a freight train. My face flushed with the awkwardness of it all. Joanne had revealed something far more personal than I had anticipated on my first day at work. There were no euphemisms here, no beating around the bush. She was blunt, unapologetically so. She spoke with the kind of boldness that only comes from someone who is completely comfortable in their own skin, even if that comfort left the rest of us scrambling for composure. Lisa, the manager, remained calm, at least outwardly. She gave me a brief look that conveyed an entire conversation in a single glance. It was the look of someone used to navigating uncomfortable situations with grace. There was a stiffness to her smile, though, a subtle indication that this wasn't exactly a normal day at the store. Joanne, seemingly oblivious to the impact of her confession, went on about the incident, explaining how she had gone to retrieve her toys from the trash. There was a sense of victory in her story, as though this was a battle she had won and was now recounting to us, her captive audience. I found myself nodding along, not sure how else to react, still trying to process the fact that this was happening in a shoe store on my first day of work. The oddest part was how ordinary the scene around us remained. Customers milled about, browsing the shelves, completely unaware of the strange conversation happening just a few feet away. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a steady glow on the shoes below. The smell of leather and the faint sound of pop music playing over the store's speakers created an odd contrast to the content of Joanne's story. It was surreal. Eventually, Joanne wandered off to the back of the store, leaving Lisa and me standing there in the wake of her revelation. The silence between us was thick with the weight of what had just happened. There was no need for words. Both of us were still processing. I glanced at Lisa again. She was a professional, clearly used to handling all sorts of situations, but even she seemed thrown off by Joanne's openness. She gave me a small, tight-lipped smile, one that seemed to say, "Well, welcome to the team." For the rest of the day, Joanne went about her work as if nothing unusual had occurred. She was entirely unbothered by the awkwardness she had created, moving between tasks with the ease of someone who had worked there for years. Meanwhile, I spent the remainder of my shift trying not to think too hard about what had just transpired, though it was impossible not to. Every time I glanced in her direction, the memory of her story replayed in my head. By the end of the shift, I was both amused and bewildered. The entire day had started so normally, and yet, here I was, leaving with a story I would never forget. The absurdity of the situation was something that could only happen in real life. A first-day experience so bizarre that it bordered on comedic. As I walked to my car that evening, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. I had expected a quiet, uneventful job at a shoe store, but Joanne had managed to turn my first day into something memorable. Her boldness, her refusal to conform to typical workplace boundaries, and the sheer unexpectedness of her confession had shaken up the monotony of retail in the most unexpected way. I realized then that working here might not be as predictable as I'd initially thought. Sure, there would be plenty of slow days, filled with nothing but folding boxes and organizing shoes. But then there would be days like this, days where the most unexpected moments unfolded in the least likely of places. Days when a simple job turned into something far more interesting. The drive home was filled with thoughts about the unpredictability of people. Joanne, with her small stature and unassuming appearance, had delivered one of the most surprising first-day experiences I'd ever had. And in that moment, I knew this job was going to be anything but boring.